Good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Sears. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at TeamSite, and I'll be interviewing today Josh Moon, who is a solutions engineer here. Josh and I will be talking about integrating TeamSense with existing HRIS systems at the manufacturing and logistics companies that we serve. And we're in for a treat because Josh has tons of experience doing this and lots of stories to tell. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Great to see you. Before we jump in, a bit of housekeeping. First, we will have time for Q&A at the end. Send questions in through the meeting chat. Shannon on our team is running the show behind the scenes, and she'll be asking those questions with the time that we have left after Josh and I have our conversation. Secondly, we host these TeamSense Tuesday webinars every Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time. Next week, we have a great webinar with our customer success leader, Sarah Irvin, and she'll be talking about scaling success from one site to many with TeamSense. So make sure you register for that and join us next Tuesday. So let's get started. Josh, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do at TeamSense.
Yeah. So like you said, I'm a support or a solutions engineer here at TeamSense. I've been with the company for just over 2 years now. And so what solutions engineer means is that I help all of our customers set up our integrations and connect to their HRIS. And then I also answer some of our support tickets as well.
So you spend a lot of time talking with customers about their systems, what they want from them, what they're getting from them, and fix things if they go sideways.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I've worked with just about everybody that we have to understand their company structures and notifications and how to get them set up.
Excellent. And so we're talking about integrations today. So tell us about the types of integrations you help our customers with.
Yeah, so we really split it into two major kinds. The first kind is syncing employee data from their HRS to TeamSense. And then the other is sending the time and attendance data that we get in TeamSense and sending it back to their HRIS. And this can be used for payroll or time tracking or anything else.
So everything works together seamlessly.
Exactly. That's right.
Fantastic. And so you've helped TeamSense do this at dozens of customers. Tell us about the process. What do you need to do to help a TeamSense client go live and connect to their existing ecosystem?
Yeah, so we try to make it as easy as possible for our customers. We have a couple of pre-built integrations that we have already set up, and we have examples of them working and in action. And so when we're able to set those up, it's usually just a matter of making sure that we have access to whatever systems we're trying to get and send that information to, and then testing to make sure that we're getting and sending the right information. For some of these, that can mean an API integration to their HRS. For others, it's something like an SFDP or reporting as a service update. But either way, we find some way to work with their system and get them that data.
Fantastic. And this is going to be a loaded question. I'm sure there's not an easy answer to this question, but how long does that usually take?
Yeah, so it really depends on a couple of different factors. If it's an integration that we've set up before, usually the biggest blockers that we have in those cases are making sure that we have the right access to those systems. For things like API connections, we have to make sure that we have the right permissions to access all of the right employee data and to send back all of the right data. So it can take a little bit to make sure that we have that right. And then the other part is making sure that we have all of the data mapped accordingly as well. So because of those two things, we're able to be really flexible with the customer's timeline and launch, within their windows. And it's really up to them and to how quickly they can get those two things working with us.
And the last part, how quickly they can get those two things working. What's on the client side? What are some of the things that might slow it down or speed it up? If somebody comes into you and says, Josh, we need this up and running in 5 days, what must they be able to provide to you for you to be able to turn it around quickly? And I know there's a range here, a few days to a few months. What do they need to get you to move that faster?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the best thing that can help us is to come prepared with someone at your company that understands the IT side of the business. So this can be somebody that maybe has an understanding of what API access you have, or maybe it's a connection at your account executive at the HRS company that you're working with. Somebody that understands how to get us the right access to those systems can really help speed up that process.
That makes a lot of sense. And now a question that I hear a lot, and you probably hear a lot also. Hey, Josh, I already have an HRIS system. Doesn't TeamSense just replace that system? Why do I need TeamSense and my HRIS system?
Yeah, so this is a great point, and really we aim to work sort of hand in hand with the HRS. While the HRS is sort of the end all be all for time and attendance or pay, we help expose additional information to the employees, and then we also help enrich with like real-time notifications to the managers. So I've heard real-time complaints from both companies that we've helped onboard and my own personal family members that work in manufacturing about how difficult it is to see things like time off requests or points availability or things like that. And with TeamSense, we make that information available within a single keyword for those employees. So we really help to open that up and get a lot more visibility to those things.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's very important. So there's lots of information in an HRIS, of course, and TeamSense can make that more visible in a more real-time way for decisions.
Exactly. And in fact, this has recently become valuable for one of our customers as they've been negotiating some deals with some of the union workers. They found that this functionality, being able to see the attendance points that they have really easily through TeamSense, has been a big benefit to those union workers.
That's fantastic. And so if I'm at an existing manufacturing company and I have something like Workday or Ceridian, Dayforce, I know we have turnkey integrations with those systems. What's it like to connect to one of the, and I only named a couple, there are others. What's it like with those turnkey type of integrations? What do you need to do? What does the client need to do?
So with those turnkey integrations, it really comes down to those main steps that I outlined before, which is just making sure that we have the right access. Once we have that access, the turnkey part of it means that all of the nuts and bolts have been put together on our side and everything else has sort of been mapped out. All the tough work has been done and we just need to connect the dots for your company.
And then to replay what you said before, connecting the dots for a company means the data is there, but with TeamSense, you make that visible, accessible to the worker, the supervisor, the HR team, potentially even up to the CHRO. Everyone can see data at the level that they need to see it to make decisions.
Exactly. Yeah, we're exposing that information from the HRS to the employee. We're providing real-time notifications to the supervisors. We're giving an easier insight into who's available and who's around or who's not to the HR level. So we're really trying to add visibility to everyone.
That's great. And I queued it up in the beginning saying you have lots of stories. What are some of the things you've heard from clients once they get that visibility and transparency that they hadn't, especially related to their HRIS? What are some typical comments you hear from our customers?
Yeah, so a lot of times the biggest thing that we hear is, other than the employee getting that additional visibility, is clearing up a bunch of time for either supervisors or HR professionals that have to manually enter time off requests that have been called into their manager or have been texted or maybe punched into some other request system. So a lot of times there is a lot of manual entry back and forth from whatever system they had before to their HRS. And so the biggest thing that we hear is that we've saved them a lot of time from having to enter that directly into their HRS. It's really sped up that workflow for them.
And that data or that information that you might be mentioning, that might be in people's heads at the end of the day. It might be on sticky notes on tables.
Exactly. If you call your manager and tell them you're going to be out and your manager's out on the floor, they may not have the chance to go and enter it right away and you may get missed. And, if you're able to text into TeamSense, that goes right into your HRS right away. Your manager still knows and everything's taken care of.
Beautiful. You touched on it before, but let's break it down a little bit more mechanically here, data in, data out. So how can TeamSense push data into time and attendance systems?
Yeah, so we can take requests or absences from employees, and depending on whatever they enter in their absence form, based on how we've configured it with that company, we can then send specific pay codes or event IDs out to their HRS. And then once it hits their HRS, usually that HRS has some additional workflow that goes through either an approval process or hitting a time card, something along those lines. But the steps are for the employee to fill out their absence form, request whatever they need to, and then have that same expected pay code go into their HRS and be actioned appropriately.
And I imagine that's a big part of the onboarding that you do with clients, mapping the information the HRS requires to the forms that are served up on TeamSense. Talk me through that process. How do you work with teams to get that right?
Yeah, so every HRS system codes time and attendance events a little differently. And even at a company level, companies are able to customize and change how those time codes look. For example, they may have time codes that are available to specific locations or for specific event types for, one individual or one type of employee over another. So I work with them to get an absence form that provides the options that they want to their employees. And then at the end of that absence form, whatever comes out of that translates properly into their HRS so that everything works the way that they're familiar with, but in an easier to translate way.
Got it. And we talked about turnkey integrations before, but I know that we work with HRIS that we don't necessarily have a turnkey integration yet. With those, is it starting from scratch? Are you starting from zero if there's not a turnkey integration?
It's not necessarily from zero. A lot of these HRIS companies have really great documentation already for developers. And so oftentimes we will, again, work with whatever IT professional that you have and whatever documentation is available for that HRS in order to learn more about how to connect to it. And then we can go and build those connectors through our integration system and get that up and running. So we've done that before for previous customers, and we're always willing to explore and learn more about other systems.
And even that's great, Josh. And even with HRIS that we don't have an out-of-the-box turnkey integration, we have integrated with almost all major HRIS before, and we can reuse that knowledge and those templates to bring people into connect those systems with future clients. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So for example, we set up an integration for one HRS, and this data was so similarly structured at another company that we were able to reuse it, even though it was a different system entirely. And on top of that, the data is structured in similar ways across systems anyways. So while we may be sending like slightly different data to Ceridian versus ADP, ultimately we're still sending a time code, we're still sending a date, how much time they're missing, things along that nature. And the worker objects are very similar as well. So we can use that knowledge of those existing systems in order to quickly iterate and build out those new integrations.
And I asked you about pushing data into HRIS. What about pushing it out or pulling it into TeamSense? What about data going the other direction?
Yeah, that's one of the best things, in my opinion, is that we're able to very quickly set up customers and employees into TeamSense. And this can be a big time saver because instead of having some HR individual export some report that's modified in a way that allows us to get all their employees set up, we're able to turn on that integration and very quickly import thousands of employees into TeamSense that already have their employee number, that have their phone number, that has their managers, where they're located, groups that they're in, things along that nature. And it speeds up the process a lot for getting them onboarded.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. Before anyone can use it, we need to know all the employees and something about the organizational structure, who has approval, who supervises who, et cetera. And get that information from the HRIS in the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. And before having an integration, this can be a process that, depending on the size of your company or how complex your data is, could take, someone in HR a long time to build a report for in order to get everything that's needed. But if we're able to directly access their HRIS, we can usually put together the data that we need a lot quicker. And then it's connected and they don't have to do anything else at that point.
Let me just pause for a second and remind everybody, please send in questions. This is going I'm learning a lot, Josh. I've been at the company for a couple months now, so I've picked some of this up, but hearing it straight from you is fantastic. Those of you in the audience, if you have other questions, send them in because we will have Q&A at the end. Let's talk about benefits of integrating with TeamSense. And you've touched on some of them, but I want to go into a little bit more depth because I think just in the conversation so far, integrating with HRIS, not a challenge. We've done that with many type of systems. We can figure out how to push data into HRIS, pull it out to get it set up. But then why do it? Like what are some of the benefits? So let me start with the manual data processing, and you touched on it, but let's go into a little bit more depth. What are some of those manual data processing tasks that go away once our customers integrate TeamSense with their existing HRIS or time and attendance system?
Sure. So I think there's three obvious sort of points in the process that you can see, or three different people in the process that you can see how this helps. And the first starts with the employee in the actual call-off process. So they haven't had to do anything necessarily to get into TeamSense because they've already been uploaded through their HRS automatically in that integration. When they call in, they don't have to worry about whether or not they're going to reach their manager. They don't have to worry about whether or not their manager is going to enter that time on time, or if they have enough vacation balance, or if they have too many points, because they're going to see that information beforehand. And they call in and they know that their notification is off and to the right people. For the supervisor gets that notification automatically. They don't have to go check their HRIS manually or wait on a phone call or get, hearsay from an HR person. They get a text message to their phone and they're able to see that employee is off. And then with one more click, they're able to very quickly see at a glance who in their entire team is off for the day and have a very quick understanding of what they're working with that day. So that saved them a lot of time. I've heard stories of supervisors running reports before to have to get, head count of who's available, and that saves them that. Sorry, you looked like you're about to ask a question.
I was getting excited about that because what I've heard from our customers is shift swap or shift changes are challenging times, because especially if you have to get ready for the first shift, you have to know who's going to be there. If it takes you an hour to figure out who you're going to have on the floor, you're behind from the get-go. And then it seems like it kind of, I've heard from our customers, it steamrolls. Then second shift, you're further behind and you're trying to figure out who's going to be there for second shift. So, what have customers said about that agility, keeping up with the pace of production?
Yeah, what we've found is that, another part of this benefit is that when we collect that data, we can also provide insights into that data and graphs and metrics over when people call out. And so in addition to being able to have that like daily view of who's out, we've heard stories of our companies also using those insights to get views into what days people call off the most. And then they can then schedule more people and adjust accordingly in order to compensate and not lose that extra productivity.
Oh, so it's not just the immediate notifications on the morning of or the hour, but they can adjust over time as well and take a longer term approach because they have the data available to them.
Exactly. Yeah. We're sending that data to their HRS in real time, and they're getting that sent to where it needs to be. But oftentimes in HRS systems, you have to build and run those reports manually to see what that data looks like. And in TeamSense, we collect all of that with easy to read labels, and then we have those reports built out for you.
And I think I cut you off. You talked about the employee, the hourly employee. You talked about the supervisor. What about HR? And maybe you touched on it just now, but how do they benefit from having this information?
Yeah, so on top of having the same benefits as those supervisors of getting notifications, of seeing their headcount at a glance, those HR individuals usually get an even wider view, right? So they can see entire divisions or even their entire company if need be. And they can have a sort of bird's eye view of how the facility is running and who's available. On top of that, they get those reports, and then we hopefully help speed up the onboarding process by getting those employees quickly loaded into TeamSense and being able to, quickly get those employees sending their time and attendance data back to their HRS.
I want to save time. This is fantastic. I want to save time for questions, but let me ask you one more question before we go to the Q&A from the audience. And I always like to end with a story. Probably don't name the company name because I don't know if we have permission to do that, but like, just tell us a story about a client that you've worked with from start to finish, onboarding, rollout, training, if that was part of the process, and then the results, because you have the benefit of walking with our customers from start to present day. Tell us a story about somebody who's been on that journey with you.
Yeah, I think my most memorable one was probably the first one that I set up on my own from start to finish. And it was memorable because it was one that we hadn't done before. It was a learning experience for me, for TeamSense, for the other company that we were working with. So we went through the learning experience of finding out what was available within this HRS and how we could connect to it. And ultimately, we found that in order to get access to their API, it was a little more difficult to do so. We would have had to get a connection with an employee there, have tickets escalated. And at the time, that HRS company was very busy. So we found out how to do it through an SFTP connection with a reporting as a service export. So I worked hand in hand with this HR professional there. She was really great and really responsive in building out this report. I was able to import all the data that she was looking for. We were able to work with her to get specific groups of people imported, getting them imported with specific permissions and things like that. And then the trickier part was also getting her that time and attendance data returned. I worked with her for maybe about a month or two before we got a contact at that company to help us format the data as it needed to be. And once we got that connection at the company, the rest of it, I think we finished it up in about a week. We got everything sent out. And since then, everything has been running smoothly. Her connection, I get her employee updates every night. And then 3 times a day, I send them time and attendance data and it imports to their time and attendance system. And I haven't heard any complaints so far. It's been a really great experience.
That's fantastic. And so from that story, it sounds like we were ready at TeamSense to move very quickly, but there was some research that needed to be done on the other end in order to get everything connected.
Yeah. So like I said before, one of the big blockers can be making sure that we have the right access. And the difficulty there was that in order to get that access, we had to have somebody that was running tickets at that HRS company to help us open up that access. And waiting on that was the longest part of the process for sure.
Well, I think now it's time to go to our audience. Shannon, do we have any questions that have come in?
We do. We have a lot of questions this morning, so we will try to get through all of them. If not, feel free to send your questions in after the webinar and we'll be sure to get back to those. So first question up. Hello, Josh and Justin. My question is, can you define for me, or better define for me, the difference between what a turnkey integration is and what's not turnkey?
Yeah, absolutely. So the turnkey integrations are integrations that we've already confirmed are working and set up. So these are things that we've already done all of the difficult work of making sure that we're able to access and send the data at all. And at that point, really the only thing we need to do is work to make sure that we have the appropriate access that we need. Once we've done that, we on TeamSense finish those connections and set everything up and make sure it looks properly. For those non-turnkey integrations, those are the ones that require more discovery work, where we have to find out what's available at the HRS, maybe build out the connectors to it manually, or maybe build out a report through the RAS. But those require a little bit more effort and may take a little bit more to get them up and running. I hope that answers that.
And Josh, once you do one of those, does that then become a candidate for a turnkey integration if you've gone through that initial heavy lift on the discovery?
Yeah, oftentimes it's a big help for us in that case. So, like I said earlier, there was one that I built for one company. In fact, it was that first one that I ever launched as the SFTP report. And I was able to reuse that for a different HRIS completely, just because the data was structured similarly. So if we have something that is able to work or that we've used before, then yeah, it effectively can become a turnkey integration for us, speed up the process.
Fantastic. Okay, next question. How have unions reacted to having this type of system in place?
Yeah, that's another great question. So the most recent integration that I've been working on actually is to get points out of Ceridian Dayforce. And we have a company that has said that this has been a big benefit to their union workers because we've been able to expose otherwise really hard to find information to those workers. So, I don't know the details of their negotiations, but I've heard that it's been a big benefit to the company.
And if I could just jump in on what I hear anecdotally is both unions and the employer benefit from transparency, because there's a lot of friction that goes on, just like one side having information, the other side not having it, and the back and forth about, hey, can you tell me this? How many points do I have? There's just a lot of stuff that doesn't get counted because both sides of that absence don't have the same information.
This also helps to remove the human error, of the potential of misreporting or even, we'd hate to think of it, but, intentional misreporting. So it makes sure that everybody, like you said, has 100% transparency into it.
Excellent. Okay, next question, Josh. This one is specifically for you. We are evaluating HRIS systems. Which ones do you see the most often?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So far, we've pretty much run the gamut of HRS connections. I think that the most common one so far has probably been Ceridian Dayforce. I've got 2 of those that I'm running right now. Maybe followed up closely by ADP, as we have a couple of those either done or in the pipeline as well. I think my wife's company uses ADP even. So yeah, I think Ceridian and ADP are the 2 biggest that I've seen.
Josh, you mentioned analytics and reporting. Can TeamSense reports be exported into other systems for deeper analysis?
So right now, we do offer automatic exports of the basic attendance summary that an admin can see when they log into TeamSense. And then we also offer an automatic export of the forms responses. So that's the line by line response that anybody is given to an absence form. We can deliver those to you automatically, and then how you handle that data afterwards is sort of up to you. In terms of exporting the analytics data, currently, I don't think we have a way to export that, but I know that's something that we've heard requests of before, and it's something that we have looked into.
Okay. Do you recommend that customers roll out with an HRIS integration right away, or should they wait until after their initial deployment of TeamSense?
That's a great question. I think it really depends on sort of I think a couple of things. One would be how big your company is, and how many people you're looking to start TeamSense with. And the other thing is how or what your timeline looks like. So, the quicker you're looking to roll out, it may be a little difficult to also get the integration up and running within that time frame. So we have to be realistic about those goals there. And then if you have a lot of employees that you're onboarding, it might be a lot easier to just wait until that integration is confirmed and working so that you can get all of them imported at the same time, rather than having to work through that data on your own and have us import it. For example, we just onboarded a new company, and instead of having HR individuals from 4 different locations get 3,000 employees data collected for me, we were able to just turn on the integration and get all of that imported automatically.
English is not the first language for many of our employees. Spanish is the second most spoken language to English there. How does TeamSense support other languages?
It's a great question. So we handle language preferences in TeamSense. We support, I don't know the exact number, like 20 something different languages. It's a lot. And so depending on what your company supports at TeamSense, we can, in the integration, import any language preferences that are stored in your HRIS, store them with that employee, and then whenever we deliver them any sort of form, that form will be translated into the language that they've preferred. Communications won't be sent automatically translated because those are things that the HR person has usually written out, but we will translate anything that we can to their preferred language.
And Josh, for that employee on the inbound side that's texting in non-English, what's that experience like?
Yeah, they can text in whatever language they'd like. Not only do we have predefined keywords that are set up in a lot of different languages to recognize our absence forms and other specific forms, but we also use natural language processing for those incoming messages. So the great thing is, even if there's a language that we don't support, and they, for example, we set up a company in TeamSense that only supported English. We had somebody text in Chinese that they were sick and they weren't feeling well. And our system was able to correctly send them an absence form and get that delivered to them. Now, it's still dependent on the person's preferred language as to how that absence form is translated, but we're able to read those incoming messages without any issues.
Excellent. Okay, we've got 3 more questions. So I'm going to try to get through them. What about, this is a really good one. What about upkeep to integrations as the ecosystem changes? How do you manage that?
Yeah, so a lot of our integrations are sort of a set it and forget it sort of thing is what we aim for, but we also are very flexible to work with the companies to make sure that everything stays working correctly. So sometimes what this can look like is maybe a change in reporting structure where we need to change how notifications or supervisors are set up. Other times this could be maybe a new division and we're adding a new site. So we have to change some parameters for the integration to configure that. And I think the only other thing that we usually see changed after an integration is set up, though, is maybe a different time and attendance event being sent into their HRS. So maybe we're updating available options for their employees. But those are usually the only upkeep that we kind of see.
And those sound like pretty, on our side, those are pretty easy to accomplish, right?
Oh, yeah. Most of those are really easy to update. Most of them usually don't require much of an interaction with the integration itself and are usually just configurations on TeamSense's side. But yeah, they're really easy updates.
All right. We do not track attendance, or I'm sorry, we do track attendance, but not through points. Are there other ways to track attendance based on companies that you've worked with?
So right now, the only real tracker that we have is points, but we are investigating other things to track, like vacation balances and things like that. So we're really interested in things that you might be interested in showing to your employees. If you have some ideas, definitely send them into TeamSense, and we'd love to hear them as we build out this feature a little bit more.
Excellent. Okay, and the last question we've got for today is TeamSense hiring support engineers?
I don't know that I have the answer to that one. I think Shannon might actually be the best answer for that.
Well, we love the enthusiasm. We don't currently have an opening for support engineers, but we would love for you to stay in touch. Check out our website, teamsense.com, and at the bottom or at the top, I believe, you can find the career page where all of our recent and upcoming job listings are. Okay, that's it.
And Shannon, just two last things. Josh mentioned us wanting to hear ideas about types of configurations and things. How do people get in touch with us outside of this webinar?
Yes, whether it be about feedback or the webinar itself or jobs, we're going to make it easy for you. If you just reach out to webinars@teamsense.com, we will make sure it gets to the right department and your answer will be questioned. Your questions will be answered.
Well, Josh, Shannon, thank you. Thank you to all of you who took time out of your day to be part of this conversation. We really appreciate it. Remember, next Tuesday, another great speaker, Sarah Irvin, will be talking about scaling success from one site to many. We start with lots of our customers. I'm sure you can give testimony to this, Josh. We start with one site and they have 30 sites. We figure it out on one site and then scaling that success to other sites is something that we love to do with customers. And Sarah's going to be talking about that in more detail next Tuesday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time on TeamSense Tuesday webinars. So thank you all. Josh, Shannon, everybody, that concludes our webinar for today, and we'll see you next Tuesday, hopefully.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, everybody.